الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لكل جعلنا منكم شرعة ومنهاجا ولو شاء الله لجعلكم أمة واحدة ولكن ليبلوكم فيما آتاكم فاستبقوا الخيرات إلى الله مرجعكم جميعا فينبئكم بما كنتم فيه تختلفون صدق الله العظيم. We welcome you today, brothers and sisters, from Masjid Al-Ghufran in the Tamantun Dr. Ismail district of the city of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, as we address you, our brothers and sisters in Egypt. We live in a very strange world today. It grows stranger and stranger every day. It's a mysterious world. Things are happening in the world that never happened before. For example, for the first time in human history, all of mankind is being brought together in one global society. Is this by accident? Or is there something which explains it? All of the world is being herded into one global economy. Never before in history did this exist. Is this by accident? Or is there something which explains it? And all of mankind is brought into one bogus and fraudulent monetary system. And tomorrow, all the currencies will be gone. And tomorrow there will be one global currency. Is this by accident? Or is there something which explains it? 100 years ago, if someone wanted to travel from Bursaid or Iskandaria to New York, it would take 2 months by sea. Today, thanks to the unprecedented progress of modern Western scientific and technological revolution, it takes a few hours. Yesterday, you had to write a letter. If you were in New York and you wanted to communicate to someone in India, and it would take a few months for the letter to reach. Today, thanks to unprecedented progress in telecommunications, you just pick up the phone and you dial and you're speaking directly with India. Yes, indeed. It is a world of unprecedented scientific and technological progress. Yes, indeed. This progress has come from modern Western civilization. There are those who see with only one eye. They are internally blind. For them, knowledge comes only from external observation and scientific experimentation, and from the New York Times and the Washington Post and television and radio, daily newspapers. And they are people who swallow this falsehood, that this modern unprecedented progress which comes from modern Western civilization, validates the claim of the West to be the ultimate civilization of mankind, that there is no more to come after this. This is the end of history. That all previous civilizations, including Islamic civilization, are now obsolete, are now moribund, and they belong to the museums of history. And so any attempt to enforce the Sharia of Islam represents backwardness, represents trying to take something out of the museum and bring it back into history. And so they oppose it. These are the one-eyed people. But there are others who don't see with one eye. They see with two eyes. They see with the external eye and they see with the internal eye, because Allah has placed faith in their hearts. Faith is not sold in the stock market. And when Allah puts faith in the heart, then He puts nur in the heart. And nur is not sold in the stock market. When these people look at the world today, they don't see a world of unprecedented progress. On the contrary, they see the worst of all worlds. It's never been worse than this. Because they can penetrate beyond the external facade of scientific and technological progress. They can penetrate beyond the glitter and the pomp. And they can see that those who today control power in the world, unprecedented power, use that power to oppress. They see an age of universal oppression, where those who are powerful are oppressing the rest of the world. They see not only political oppression, they see economic oppression. That the economy around the world is now built in such a way that the rich and the powerful can benefit from it and grow constantly richer, while the rest of the world is imprisoned in permanent poverty. That's not progress. They see not only political and economic oppression, they see monetary oppression, where a monetary system that is bogus and fraudulent and utterly haram has been imposed upon the rest of mankind by modern Western civilization. And that monetary system is functioning as an instrument of financial oppression and monetary oppression. And so they do not blame Egyptians for being poor. They don't say that Egyptians are poor because they are lazy. They don't say that Indonesians are poor because they are lazy, and Bangladeshis and Pakistanis are poor because they are lazy. They say, no, there is more to this. That poverty in the world today, universal poverty and destitution in the world today, has not come by accident, but by design. And if you want to understand the cause, you must go to riba, because the Quran explains it. And so now let us turn to the subject of this strange age, before we turn to the Sharia and to Egypt's predicament and dangerous predicament at this moment. Who are those who control power in the world? And who are those who are ruling the world today? And how should we relate to them? Does Ikhwan al-Muslimun know the destination to which they are taking Egypt today? Does the Ikhwan al-Muslimun know the destination to which the world is being taken today? Do they know what is the end of history? We want to spend a few moments today explaining that before we turn to this reckless effort to enforce the Sharia and to a somewhat misguided effort to enforce the Sharia. Our language is blunt. Our language is harsh. We are forced to use this blunt and harsh language because of the dangerous moment in which Egypt is now located. And what happens in Egypt today will affect the world of Islam tomorrow. And so we have every right to comment on what is happening in Egypt today. Egypt stands on the brink of a pit of fire. And who is smiling? Only the Zionists. The Zionists are the ones who today control power in the world. And there are two kinds of Zionists. There are Zionist Jews and there are Zionist Christians. Every Egyptian knows that. And a strange and mysterious alliance has taken place between Zionist Jews and Zionist Christians. The Quran says that it has come tibyanan likulli shay. So has it explained this alliance between Zionist Jews and Zionist Christians? The alliance of Zionist Jews and Zionist Christians made its appearance, first of all, in the most spectacular way, that is, in Britain. When Britain emerged as a ruling state in the world, and Pax Britannica appeared on the stage of history, and the sterling pound emerged as a universal currency. Did that happen by accident? The Zionist Jewish and Zionist Christian alliance then manifested itself again spectacularly for the second time, with the emergence of the United States of America as the second ruling state in the world, replacing Britain, and Pax Americana replacing Pax Britannica, and the US dollar replacing the sterling pound. Did this happen by accident? Or does the Quran explain? And now we are living at that moment in history, stranger than anything else that history has ever witnessed, when the United States of America is in irreversible decline. Political, economic, monetary, financial, and military. And the US dollar is heading for a meltdown. And it looks plain and clear that there is a successor ruling state to replace the United States as a third ruling state in the world. And once again it will be a Jewish Christian and Jewish, a Zionist Christian and Zionist Jewish alliance, which will spectacularly deliver to the world that third ruling state. And a new monetary system to replace the US petrodollar monetary system. We are living at that moment in history of transition. Does Ikhwan al-Muslimun have any knowledge of this? Has Ikhwan al-Muslimun done any research on this? To look in the Quran and look in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam for answers. In order to understand the destination to which Ikhwan is taking Egypt, and by implication taking the world of Islam, we need to answer these questions. This is our answer. If you say that we are wrong, that's not enough. You must answer. You must give the explanation from the Quran and from the Hadith. Do not simply say that Imran Hosein is wrong. That's not enough. Tell us what is the answer. The Quran is tibyanan likulli shay. It must explain history. Our answer is that Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam said that when Dajjal is released, he will live on earth for 40 days. Yawmun kasana, Yawmun kashahr, Yawmun kajum'ah, wasairu ayyamihi ka ayyamikum. Sahih Muslim. And when he is released on earth in a day which is like a year, he will be released on an island. And we have descriptions of that island in the hadith of Tamim ad-Dari. In my book, Jerusalem in the Quran, which has now been translated to Arabic, mashallah, and it's available on my website, and you'll see the website at the bottom of the screen. In my book, Jerusalem in the Quran, which was written 10 years ago, I identified the island as Britain. And I went on to say that when Dajjal was in a day which is like a year, it is from Britain, Pax Britannica, that he commenced his mission to rule the world. And that when Britain was replaced by the United States and Pax Americana replaced Pax Britannica, Dajjal had moved to a day which is like a month. And now that Pax Americana is in irreversible decline, and a new ruling state is to replace it, and a new monetary system is to replace the US petrodollar monetary system, we said it is Israel which wants to replace the United States. And it is the universal, invisible and intangible electronic and digital money controlled by the Zionist-controlled banking system around the world, which will be the new monetary system, again backed by the petrodollar. Not the petrodollar, by petro money. This is our explanation. If you say that we are wrong, you must tell us what is right. The Quran has directed attention to that Zionist Christian and Zionist Jew alliance. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded in Surah Al-Ma'idah, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا اليهود والنصارى أولياء. Allah is not speaking about all Jews and about all Christians. Absolutely not. Well then, which Jews and which Christians? The answer, بَعْدُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. He's speaking about a Jewish-Christian alliance which has now appeared in history, in the Zionist-Christian, Zionist-Jewish alliance, which lies at the heart of modern Western civilization. In fact, it has hijacked modern Western civilization. What is the price that we would pay if we turn to Washington as our Qibla and hold the view that the Sharia belongs to the museums of history? What is the price that we pay if we accept the lie that religion and politics must be separate from each other and we secularize life, which is what the Judeo-Christian Alliance wants us to do? What is the price that we pay when we identify with them? Allah goes on to say, وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. And so we say to such people who are absolutely opposed to the Sharia of Islam, who don't want it at all, no, the Sharia should be sent back to the museum. It is obsolete, it is moribund. It represents backwardness. We say to such people, we need to charter a few jumbo jets and send you on a one-way trip to Washington, because that's where you belong. وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Allah does not provide guidance for a people who are wicked, and that's what they are. They corrupt every single thing that they touch. And they also present us with unprecedented fitna to test us. From modern Western civilization has come two things. And you are familiar with these words. The first word is fitna, and the second is fasad. There is fasad today in the political system. It's corrupted beyond recognition. It is collapsing all around the world. There is fasad in the economy. It is corrupted. It smells stink. There is fasad in the monetary system. There is fasad in the banking system. There is fasad in agriculture and the production of food. There is fasad in the educational system. There is fasad in the male-female relationship. There is fasad in the feminist revolution. Don't be annoyed with me for saying that. There is universal fasad in the world today. And I ask, is this happening by accident? Or is there an explanation? No, it's not happening by accident. Not at all. The Quran has come as tibyanan likulli shay. And the explanation is there in the Quran, Inna Ya'juja wa Ma'juja mufsiduna fil ard. That's the explanation. And I've written a book on the subject, an Islamic view of Gog and Magog in the modern world. The fasad comes together with fitna. We are being tested as never before in history. And there are those of us, and many of them are in Egypt, who share with me the view. There are many of them in Egypt who share with me the view that our ulama have failed us. If Egypt is poor, miserably poor today, the primary blame is that ulama have failed us. The money that we are using is not the money that Allah gave to us. The Quran speaks about dinar. The word dinar is in the Quran. The Quran speaks about dirham. The word dirham is in the Quran in the plural. And so long as we are using dinar and dirham, and remember, tomorrow, Israel is going to be using dinar and dirham. Tomorrow. Just remember that. When Israel uses dinar and dirham, then the ulama of Islam will wake up. Is that Islam? It's coming. My guess is probably only about 20 years away from now, before Israel starts using dinar and dirham. Because every Jew knows that the money we are now using is bogus, it's fraudulent, it's haram. Every Jew knows that. The only people who don't know that are the ulama of Islam. And so if there are those in Egypt, like myself, who are worried about the enforcement of the Sharia at a time when the ulama of Islam have failed us, don't blame them. Don't blame them. How should the Sharia be enforced? Is there such a thing as a constitutional sunnah? Give us a moment to spend some time on this subject. Yes, there is a constitutional sunnah. And the constitutional sunnah is linked with the enforcement of the Sharia. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create us all as one people. No. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. If Allah had so wished, He could have created us as one people. No. Rather, He created us with multiplicity, with diversity. إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَى وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا إلى آخر الآية. And so mankind was created with multiplicity. And that multiplicity was also the cause of different laws being sent down. لِكُلٍّ جَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. So different laws were sent to different people. But the last one was sent to Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, the Sharia. Is the Sharia to be enforced upon all of mankind? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Well then, on whom is the Sharia to be enforced? The answer? On those who accept the Sharia. On those who willingly submit to the Sharia. Those are the ones on whom the Sharia is to be enforced. Ikhwan al-Muslimun should first return to the Quran to recognize that Egypt is not one ummah. No, it is not. At the very first page of the book of Egypt are the Jews, the Christians. And these Christians in Egypt, according to Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, are our kith and kin. For Ummul Mu'minun, the mother of the believers, came from them. From their midst is one of the mothers of the believers. And so be kind to them, said Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So you are not one ummah in Egypt. What is the function of a constitution? When we turn to the constitutional sunnah, we get the answer. A constitution is needed when you have different people who want to come to live together. Then you need a constitution. If you have only one homogeneous people who have a law of their own, you do not need a constitution. Their law is sufficient for them. It is when you have different people who want to live together as an ummah, a community, only then do you need a constitution. Forget what comes from Oxford and Cambridge and Sorbonne. Listen to the Sunnah. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam recognized the diversity of the population of Medina. He recognized that there were different Jewish tribes. Some of them at war with each other. There were different pagan Arab tribes. And then there were those who had become Muslim. And then there were the Muhajirun from Mecca. And when he arrived in Medina, guess what he did? Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam spent about 7 months in patient negotiation. Not in a constitutional conference on the stage of history with debates going on in public. That's not wise. No. He entered into private discussions with each of the different tribes, each of the different groups, and negotiated a consensus. You cannot have a constitution without consensus. Ikhwan, constitutions are not established with referendums. You do not establish a constitution with an election. What nonsense. In order for a constitution to be established, you must have consensus. The Christians walked out of the constitution discussions in Egypt, and you still went ahead with it. Have you forgotten the Sunnah? Have you forgotten the Sunnah? Is this the example you are setting for the rest of the world of Islam? There are voices around the world today cautioning you for your recklessness. We hope and pray you will not be offended by our words, that you will still consider us to be your brothers, and that you will heed our advice and warning. We apologize to the Christians of Egypt. Yes, we apologize to you, because this is an embarrassment for us. This is not the way. This is reckless, and this is misguided. It was after 7 months of patient negotiations that Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam finally succeeded in forging a consensus of that on which there was agreement, minimum agreement, amongst all the units of the state, people who constituted a polity, who wanted to live together. And thus came the first written constitution in the world, the Mithaq of Medina. Is it that you have forgotten that Mithaq? How it was established? Had I been an Egyptian, I would never vote in the referendum. Never. And I urge all those in Egypt who are in agreement with my views, no, we will never vote in any referendum for Sharia, because that's a departure from the wise and enlightened Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. Rather, you have to engage in patient negotiations with wisdom, something in short supply today, isn't it? With wisdom, to try to bring about a consensus, and that consensus will give you your constitution. The Zionists will never want you to succeed in that effort. One more statement on Sharia. I said that I am also one of those, like many in Egypt, who believe that the enforcement of Sharia today, given the abject failure of our ulama, can lead us to great difficulties and embarrassments. And we want to see the Sharia enforced only on those who accept the Sharia. And that the enforcement of the sheer Sharia should lead to the emergence of an enlightened ulama who will be able to respond to the fitna, the unprecedented fitna of this age, with enlightened legal thinking, something in short supply amongst those who say that bank interest is not riba. That the paper money that we're using and the plastic and electronic money that we're using is halal, and that the modern state, the modern republican state which recognizes state sovereignty to replace Allah as Al-Malik, is halal. Short supply of wisdom. What we want to say about the Sharia is this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to call people to the way of Allah with wisdom. Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah wal maw'izati al hasana. Is this wisdom? Is this the way to impress upon the Egyptian people that you are rushing through a constitution and a referendum within a short span of time? Is this wisdom? No, it's not. Well, then what is wisdom? Let me tell you what is wisdom. Wisdom is that you will enforce the Sharia as a parallel system of law in Egypt, alongside whatever rival systems of law there may be. But you have to demonstrate the superiority of the Sharia over all rival systems of law. No, you do not stamp out the others. Let the civil law continue. Let other systems of law that other people may choose continue to operate. And you have to demonstrate with your enforcement of the Sharia that you have a superior system of law which can outshine every rival. You can't do that unless you produce the scholars of law. And law does not exist in a vacuum. No. The scholar of law must also know politics and economics and monetary economics and history and the movement of history in order for him to be able to understand the complexities of today's legal system, legal challenges. And so my word of advice is that instead of enforcing the Sharia upon a people who do not want it or who are worried about how it will be applied, do it a different way. Attract them to the Sharia by operating the Sharia in such a way that it will display its evident superiority over all rivals. One last word, ikhwan. One last word. What direction, what destination are you taking Egypt to? And what destination is the world heading to? We said that Israel is about to replace the United States as the next ruling state in the world. That's not by accident. That is Dajjal in a day which is like a week. And when a day like a week has come to the end, the malhama has already occurred. And the conquest of Constantinople has already occurred, which is after the Malhama, not the one that occurred 600 years ago. Then Dajjal is going to appear. The khuruj of Dajjal is going to take place. And he will then appear in human form. And he's going to stand up. He may come from Khorasan, but he's going to stand up in Jerusalem and declare, I am Al-Masih. But the Jews will not accept him as Al-Masih until he rules over a holy land which encompasses the biblical frontiers of the Holy Land. And you know that, every Egyptian knows that. They changed the Torah. And they brought into the Torah that the Holy Land, Al-Ardul Muqaddasa, extends from the river of Egypt, the river Nile, to the river Euphrates. Why did they do that? Because Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam came to Egypt. And then he brought Nabi Yaqub alayhi salam and the whole of Banu Israel into Egypt. And they lived in the eastern delta between the river Nile and the Red Sea. And so they came to the conclusion that this also is a part of the Holy Land, Al-Ardul Muqaddasa. But they are wrong. They are wrong. They wrote it with their own hands. That's not the Holy Land. And so, you don't need a PhD to understand. Of course, those who have the Qibla in Washington will never accept what I say. You don't need a PhD to understand that the Arab Spring was meant to prepare the way for the Arab slaughter. That they are preparing great wars against the Arabs. Because in order for Israel to become the ruling state in the world, Israel has to impose a political and economic dominion over the Arabs. Number two, Israel cannot impose a political and economic dominion over the Arabs unless and until Israel wages great wars. And these are not only military wars, these are also biological wars. And succeeds in substantially reducing the population of the Arab world. But Israel has to do something more. Israel has to expand her territory to encompass the eastern delta of Egypt. She can't do that with an aerial war or a naval war. She has to have a ground invasion. And so the plan is to attack Egypt from the east with ground troops. And when Israel attacks from the east, the NATO will attack from the west, from Libya. And those fools, and that's what they deserve to be called, fools. They were fools in Libya, and they're just as foolish in Syria today. Those fools who made an alliance with NATO, NATO being the military arm of the Zionist Judeo-Christian alliance. Those fools who made an alliance with NATO to overthrow the Libyan government have now given to NATO opportunity to be present in Libya. And so NATO will attack from the west and Israel from the east. And there will be a naval blockade from the north. And you have southern Sudan also, which is an ally of Israel today, from the south. And so they'll attack Egypt from east, west, north and south, from above and even from below, because they now have the power to make earthquakes. That war on Egypt is coming. And they need a justification for war. They need a casus bellum for war. They don't want to attack Egypt and appear to be aggressors. So what do? what do they do to prepare the way for war on Egypt? Is Ikhwan aware of this? At the moment when Egypt should be coming together, all the different forces in Egypt should be uniting to resist the greatest threat that has ever existed in Egyptian history, the Zionist threat of an attack on Egypt. At this moment when we should be uniting our people, Ikhwan's government in Egypt has succeeded, and succeeded dramatically in dividing the people as they were never divided before. Is that wisdom? Is that the destination that you take in Egypt to? Who is smiling today with what is happening in Egypt? The answer, the Zionists are smiling. That's the answer. They want to be able to set up Egypt for the attack on Egypt. That they'll make it possible through the Arab Spring for a so-called Islamic government to come into Egypt. And then they'll help that Islamic government to take control of the military. And then they'll help that Islamic government to take control of the judiciary. So that the Islamic government is in total control of Egypt. And when the Islamic government is in total control of Egypt, and the Sharia is enforced on Egypt, and civil war comes to Egypt, they'll smile. And then they will exploit the weakness of the ulama to make the Sharia look stupid, to make the Sharia look foolish, to make the Sharia look savage and backward. And there are many ways that they can do that because of the failure of the ulama today. And then they will be able to show to the world, this is what Islam is doing in Egypt. And these people are bloodthirsty people, and they only want to cut the throat of Israel in order to be able to attack Egypt and yet not be blamed for committing aggression. Is Ikhwan going to take Egypt to that destination? Knowing that that's the destination to which the world is now moving? What should we do, O Egypt, at this moment? After the colossal failure of the advisors to the present Egyptian government, they should be removed. And men of greater wisdom should take over. Number 2, no constitution should be enforced upon the people unless and until it is arrived at through consensus. The Christians in Egypt have an equal political right to the Muslims to a constitution to which they will agree. Number 3, that the Sharia should be enforced only on those who are willing to submit to the Sharia. So it will not be the law of all Egypt. No. The other systems of law will function alongside the Sharia. Number 4, that when the Sharia is enforced, we should not so enforce the Sharia that we look like fools. Rather, Islamic scholarship must rise to the occasion. Islamic scholarship must rise to the occasion to operate the Sharia in such a way that it demonstrates its evident superiority over all rival systems of law. That's not easy. That is not easy. That requires the best Islamic scholarship in the world today. And also it requires that Islamic scholarship must expand its vision beyond law to encompass all other subjects that are relevant, including the one in which I specialize, ilmu akhirul zaman. I pray that these words of mine may not offend, may not hurt, I pray that these words of mine may be accepted in the spirit in which I am given them. Yes, I have used harsh language to condemn reckless and misguided behavior, because the moment is now too dangerous. I pray that Egypt may step back from this pit of fire on which it now stands. The reason may prevail, good sense may prevail, and that the constitution may be established on the basis of consensus, and that the Sharia be enforced only on those who are willing to submit to the Sharia. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.